You doing okay?
No, not really. I'm sorry.
What's going on?
I just got evicted from my house and everything's in the car and I'm just
You have an insurance card with you as well, please?
Yes,
So the reason I stopped you is...
No, I didn't mean to do that. I'm not from this area.
You show to live off of West Palmer Lane, which is...
She was known as someone who loved the fast life, late nights, parties, and freedom. To outsiders, she appeared carefree, social, and in control. But behind that image, investigators now believe there may have been something far darker unfolding for years, hidden in plain sight. This is the case of a little girl named Ava Gonzalez, a child who, according to police, vanished without a trace nearly a decade ago. No missing person report, no school records, no alarms raised. Ava was last seen when she was just 2 years old, and for years no one realized she was gone. That changed only after authorities discovered another child, Ava's sister, allegedly locked inside a closet, malnourished to the point of permanent damage. What began as a child abuse investigation quickly unraveled into something far more disturbing: the possibility that a mother had been hiding the disappearance and death of her own child for wide. Now, for the first time, police are laying out what they believe happened to Ava Gonzalez, and the woman at the center of it all, her mother, may soon face the most serious charge the law allows. This is a case about deception, silence, and how a child can disappear without the world noticing. This is on the case. For nearly a decade, Ava Gonzalez did not exist on paper. There were no school enrollment records, no doctor's appointments, no missing child report. To the outside world, Ava was simply never there. Police only learned her name in the spring of 2025, and even then it was almost by accident. Everything began with a different child. In April 2025, Austin police responded to an apartment after receiving a report that immediately raised red flags. Inside the unit, officers found multiple children living in disturbing conditions, but one discovery stood out above all others. A young girl, approximately 7 years old, was found locked inside a bedroom closet. She was severely malnourished. At 7 years old, the child weighed just 29 pounds, the weight of a toddler. According to investigators, she had been starved for an extended period of time, receiving little more than a corn dog and half a cup of water per day. Medical professionals later determined that the damage to her body and brain was permanent. Police alleged that the child had been confined to that closet as punishment. Other children in the apartment reportedly told investigators that their mother singled her out, claiming she got into things and had difficulty controlling her bladder. For that, they say, she was isolated, deprived, and hidden. The woman accused of doing this was the children's mother, Virginia Gonzalez. At the time of her arrest, police believed Virginia had 7 children. All 7 were inside the apartment. But as detectives dug deeper, reviewing records, interviewing family members, and attempting to piece together a timeline, they realized something was wrong. There should have been 8. That realization opened a door investigators were not prepared for. According to police, Virginia Gonzalez had another daughter, Ava Marie Gonzalez, who was not in the apartment. At first, officers assumed Ava might be living with another family member. That explanation is not uncommon in child welfare cases. But when detectives tried to confirm Ava's whereabouts, the story began to fall apart. There were no school records showing Ava had ever been enrolled, no medical records past early childhood.
During the investigation, police discovered that there was an 8th child who was not found inside the home. The missing 9-year-old child was identified as Ava Marie Gonzalez.
No documentation placing her with a relative, and most chilling of all, no one had physically seen Ava since December 2017. She was 2 years old, the last time anyone could confirm she was alive. Ava had never been reported missing. As detectives expanded the investigation,
Missing persons detectives determined that Ava was last seen in December 2017 when she was 2 years old and in the custody of her mother, Virginia Marie Gonzalez.
they uncovered a series of conflicting explanations about what supposedly happened to Ava. Each story contradicted the last. One child told police that Ava had been given to another family. Another account claimed she had gone to live with her father. A document surfaced suggesting Ava was living with relatives. But investigators later determined the signature on that paperwork was forged and the contact number was fake. When police tracked down Ava's alleged father, who was living in Mexico, he told investigators he had never had custody of her. He said Virginia told him Ava was living with another family in San Antonio. He had not seen his daughter in years. Every explanation led to a dead end. And then came the most disturbing statement of all. Virginia Gonzalez's oldest son, now around 14 years old, participated in a forensic interview with investigators. At the time Ava disappeared, he was just 6 years old. What he told police would reshape the entire case. According to court documents, the boy recalled being in a motel room with his family years earlier. He said Ava was there, At some point, he heard screaming coming from the bathroom. Really bad screaming, he described. He said he saw his mother in the bathtub with Ava while the water was running. He described violence. He said the screaming eventually stopped when the water turned off. The boy told investigators that afterward he saw his mother dress Ava and place her into a car seat. He said Ava appeared to be asleep. Then came the explanation he says his mother gave him. She told him Ava was going to live with a new mum and dad. He never saw his sister again. The child also told investigators something else that stuck with them. After that day, he noticed a change in his mother's behavior. He described her as happier, lighter, like a new person. To detectives, this detail mattered. Based on the totality of evidence, police now believe Ava Gonzalez died on or around January 2, 2018. They believe her death was not accidental, and that it may have been caused by her own mother. As of now, Virginia Gonzalez has not been charged in Ava's disappearance or death, but investigators have made it clear. This is no longer a missing person case. It is a potential homicide investigation. And in the state of Texas, intentionally causing the death of a child under the age of 10 is a capital offense. The implications are enormous. While this investigation unfolds, Virginia Gonzalez remains in custody facing multiple felony charges related to the abuse of her 7-year-old daughter, the child found in the closet. Her trial is scheduled to begin soon, but prosecutors have already moved to increase her bond, citing concerns that she may flee. According to court filings, the state alleges that Gonzalez has ties to Mexico and possible connections to human smuggling. In recorded jail calls, prosecutors say Gonzalez expressed fear that authorities were going to lock her up with another inmate, reportedly responding, "For what? The baby?" Investigators believe that comment may have been a reference to Ava. Meanwhile, the defense insists the timing of these revelations is suspicious. Gonzalez's attorney argues that releasing information about Ava so close to trial unfairly taints the jury pool. He maintains that his client is innocent, and says the state is stretching facts to build a more serious case. But for law enforcement, the questions are unavoidable. How does a 2-year-old vanish without anyone noticing? How do conflicting stories go unchallenged for years? And how did no system, schools, doctors, child welfare, ever flag Ava's absence? As investigators continue searching for physical evidence, witnesses, and answers, one thing is already clear. Ava Gonzalez did not disappear overnight. She disappeared slowly, through silence, deception, and a system that never realized she was gone. And now, years later, the truth may finally be catching up. As investigators began reconstructing Ava Gonzalez's disappearance, one unsettling truth became clear. This was not a single failure. It was a chain of silence, layered with manipulation, deception, and missed opportunities that allowed a child to vanish without triggering alarms for years. According to police, Virginia Gonzalez did not simply offer one explanation for Ava's absence. She offered many, and tailored them depending on who was asking. To family members, Ava was said to be living with relatives. To Child Protective Services, she had moved in with her father. To others, she was described as someone else's child altogether. Each version shifted just enough to avoid scrutiny. Court records show that in November 2023, Child Protective Services were told Ava was living with her father. A document surfaced that appeared to support this claim, allegedly signed by one of Ava's grandmothers. But when investigators followed up, the grandmother denied signing it. The phone number listed on the document did not belong to her either. Police concluded the paperwork was fraudulent. Even more troubling, investigators found no school records for any of Gonzalez's children, not just Ava. None had ever been enrolled. That meant there were no attendance officers, teachers, or counselors to question why Ava never showed up year after year. She was invisible to the system. When detectives interviewed people who knew Virginia Gonzalez personally, a pattern began to emerge. Former friends described her as calculated, manipulative, and highly skilled at turning people against one another. One former friend told investigators that Virginia would pit family members, especially grandmothers, against each other so they wouldn't communicate or compare stories. She was a mastermind, the woman said. She always stayed in control. That control extended beyond family dynamics. Investigators obtained videos from 2024 showing Gonzalez living what appeared to be a party-heavy lifestyle, drinking, smoking, socializing on boats and at clubs. In one clip, she takes a shot on a boat, laughing with friends. In her booking photo, police later noticed a heart-shaped tattoo on her neck, matching the tattoo visible in those videos. To detectives, the contrast was jarring. While one child was allegedly locked in a closet and starved, Virginia Gonzalez appeared to be living freely, without raising concern among those around her. No one reported a missing child. No one called police asking where Ava was, and that silence allowed the story to continue. Prosecutors later revealed that Virginia Gonzalez rejected a plea deal in November 2025. The state had reportedly offered her 40 years in prison in exchange for a guilty plea on the felony injury to a child charge, the case involving the 7-year-old girl found in the closet. Gonzalez said no. Her attorney called the offer utterly absurd, signaling that the defense was prepared to take the case to trial. But shortly after that rejection, investigators took a dramatic step. Austin police filed a search warrant that, for the first time, formally laid out their belief that Ava Gonzalez had died in early 2018 and that her mother was responsible. The warrant authorized detectives to seek additional evidence tied to a possible capital murder investigation. The timing was explosive. The new filing became public just weeks before Gonzalez's jury trial was scheduled to begin on the child abuse charges. Defense attorneys immediately pushed back, arguing that releasing such information so close to trial would poison the jury pool. "This is suspicious," Gonzalez's attorney said, adding that the state was stretching facts to fit a more serious narrative. He announced plans to request both a continuance and a change of venue. Legal experts note that while publicity alone does not automatically delay a trial, the defense argument is not unusual. The question for the judge will be whether potential jurors can set aside what they've heard and focus only on evidence presented in court. But from the prosecution's perspective, the investigation into Ava could not wait. There is no statute of limitations for murder in Texas. And the testimony of a sibling, especially one describing violence, a specific location, and a sudden disappearance, can be enough to reopen a case, even years later. Investigators now believe Ava's death may have occurred in a motel bathroom, away from witnesses, away from oversight, and at a time when her mother was able to control the narrative that followed. What happens next is critical. If prosecutors move forward with a capital murder charge, the stakes escalate dramatically. In Texas, the intentional killing of a child under 10 years old carries the possibility of life without parole or the death penalty. But even before that decision is made, this case forces a broader reckoning. How did no one notice Ava was gone? How did forged documents pass through systems meant to protect children? And how many times were lies accepted because they sounded just believable enough? As Virginia Gonzalez prepares for trial on the child abuse charges, the shadow of Ava's disappearance looms over everything. 2 cases, 2 daughters, 1 mother, 1 child found alive but permanently damaged. Another child never found at all. For investigators, the goal is no longer just accountability, it is truth. Where is Ava Gonzalez? And if she is gone, can justice still speak for her? As the investigation into Ava Gonzalez deepens, one reality has become impossible to ignore. Time is both the prosecution's greatest obstacle and its greatest weapon. For nearly 10 years, Ava's disappearance went unnoticed by the systems designed to protect children. Now law enforcement is attempting to reconstruct what may have happened to her, using fragments, memories from a child witness, conflicting stories told by adults, forged documents, and behavioral patterns that only make sense in hindsight. At the center of it all is Virginia Gonzalez, a woman who, according to prosecutors, lived 2 lives at once. On the surface, she appeared functional, raising multiple children, maintaining relationships, socializing and moving through daily life without drawing serious attention. But behind closed doors, police allege, was a pattern of control, punishment, and extreme abuse that escalated over time. The child found in the closet may be the clearest window into that pattern. Prosecutors believe the alleged abuse of the 7-year-old was not an isolated incident, but the continuation of behavior that began years earlier. The child's condition, severe malnourishment, developmental damage, and prolonged isolation, suggests long-term intent, not momentary neglect. That matters legally. In Texas, injury to a child cases often hinge on intent. Prosecutors must prove that harm was knowingly or intentionally inflicted. In this case, the state argues that locking a child in a closet and depriving her of adequate food and care meets that standard. But the Ava Gonzalez investigation raises an even darker possibility, that when control was no longer enough, violence replaced it. According to investigators, Ava's disappearance did not trigger panic or frantic searching. Instead, they allege it was followed by calculated explanations, paperwork, and silence. That silence may be one of the strongest pieces of circumstantial evidence. In homicide cases without a body, prosecutors must rely on what's known as a totality of circumstances approach. That includes the last person known to be with the victim, sudden disappearance inconsistent with normal behavior, conflicting or false statements, evidence of prior abuse, behavioral changes after the disappearance. In Ava's case, police say all 5 elements may be present. She was last seen with her mother. She was never reported missing. Multiple explanations about her whereabouts collapsed under scrutiny. There is alleged evidence of abuse toward her sibling. And witnesses describe Virginia Gonzalez appearing relieved or happier after Ava vanished. Still, the defense maintains that suspicion is not proof. Virginia Gonzalez's attorney argues that there is no physical evidence tying his client to Ava's death, no body, no crime scene preserved, no forensic confirmation. He claims the state is relying too heavily on a memory recalled by a child years after the fact, memory that could be influenced by trauma or suggestion. That argument is not without precedent. Courts are cautious with delayed testimony, especially when the witness was very young at the time of the alleged events. Prosecutors must demonstrate that the account is reliable, consistent, and supported by other evidence. That is why the state's strategy appears to be unfolding in stages. First, secure a conviction or plea on the child abuse charges involving the 7-year-old. Second, continue building the Ava Gonzalez case behind the scenes. Third, present a fully developed capital murder charge, only when prosecutors believe the evidence can withstand scrutiny. From a legal standpoint, separating the cases is strategic. Trying them together could risk prejudice, appeals, or mistrials. Keeping them distinct allows the state to move forward without overreaching. But for the public, the separation is emotionally jarring. To many, the cases feel inseparable. 2 daughters, 1 household, 1 mother. The idea that justice could proceed for one child, while the other remains officially unaccounted for, is deeply unsettling. And yet that is often how complex cases unfold. Meanwhile, questions continue to surround the role of child protective services and extended family. How did forged documents go unchallenged? Why did no one verify Ava's location over the years? Why were there no welfare checks that caught the discrepancy? Experts say cases like this reveal systemic blind spots. When families move frequently, homeschool without oversight, or operate outside traditional structures, children can disappear without triggering alarms, especially when caregivers provide just enough explanation to deflect concern. That does not absolve responsibility, but it helps explain how a disappearance can remain hidden for so long. As the January trial date approaches, Virginia Gonzalez remains in custody. Prosecutors have increased her bond, citing flight risk and the seriousness of the allegations. Jailhouse calls are being reviewed. Digital evidence is being analyzed. Witnesses are being re-interviewed. And somewhere in all of this is the question that still has no answer. Where is Ava Gonzalez? If she is alive, investigators say they will not stop searching. If she is not, they are determined to speak for her, because justice delayed does not have to mean justice denied. In the end, the Ava Gonzalez case may come down to a single haunting truth. A child can disappear not because no one cares, but because everyone assumes someone else is watching. For nearly 10 years, Ava existed only in stories. Stories that shifted depending on who was asking. Stories that sounded plausible enough to avoid follow-up. Stories that were never verified. And that, investigators say, is how silence becomes dangerous. By the time Austin police realized Ava Gonzalez was missing, they were no longer searching for a living child. They were searching for answers buried under years of deception. The question was no longer where is Ava, but what happened to her, and how did the system allow this to go unnoticed for so long? From a legal standpoint, this is one of the most difficult cases a prosecutor can bring. There is no body, no confirmed crime scene preserved in time, no forensic evidence collected when it mattered most. What the state does have is a narrative built from fragments. Witness testimony, behavioral patterns, false documents, and a second child who survived conditions so severe that doctors say the damage will last a lifetime. To prosecutors, the abuse of the 7-year-old child is not just a crime on its own, it is context. It establishes a pattern of control, punishment, and isolation that, they argue, explains how Ava could disappear without immediate suspicion. It also reframes the testimony of the surviving children. The boy who described the motel bathroom incident was only 6 years old at the time. Today, his account is one of the most critical pieces of the investigation. While defense attorneys may argue memory distortion or trauma-induced confusion, investigators believe the specificity of his description, screaming, running water, sudden silence, and a permanent disappearance cannot be ignored. In homicide cases without a body, juries are often asked to decide whether the absence of evidence is itself evidence. Why was Ava never reported missing? Why were records forged? Why did no one ever produce proof she was alive elsewhere? Prosecutors believe the answers point in one direction. Still, the defense maintains that suspicion, even strong suspicion, is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Virginia Gonzalez's attorney has made it clear that he intends to challenge the timing, motives, and reliability of the state's claims. He argues that investigators are using emotionally charged allegations to influence public opinion and potentially pressure his client. The courts will ultimately decide which version of events survives scrutiny. But regardless of how the legal process unfolds, Ava's case has already exposed uncomfortable truths. Child protective systems rely heavily on documentation and self-reporting. When caregivers manipulate paperwork or move frequently, isolate children, or avoid institutions, oversight can collapse. Without school enrollment, medical visits, or consistent third-party contact, children can vanish quietly. Experts say this is not common, but it is possible, and when it happens, the consequences are devastating. The 7-year-old child found in the closet survived, but at a cost that can never be undone. Ava Gonzalez, according to investigators, may not have survived at all. 2 sisters, 2 outcomes, 1 household. No one was watching closely enough. As of now, Virginia Gonzalez awaits trial on the child abuse charges. That trial alone could result in decades behind bars. But it may only be the beginning. If prosecutors formally charge her in Ava's death, the case will escalate into one of the most serious prosecutions in Texas law. Capital murder cases are long, complex, and emotionally grueling for jurors, attorneys, and families alike. But for many watching, the legal outcome, while important, is secondary to a deeper reckoning. How many times did Ava slip through the cracks? How many chances were there to ask one more question? And how many systems accepted an answer without proof? These are the questions that linger long after courtrooms empty. Ava Gonzalez was 2 years old, the last time anyone can confirm she was alive. She never had a chance to grow up, to be seen, or to be protected the way children are supposed to be. Now, years later, the system that failed to notice her absence is finally speaking her name. And whether justice comes through a conviction, a confession, or simply the truth being known, Ava's story stands as a reminder of what happens when silence goes unchallenged. Some children disappear loudly, others disappear quietly, and sometimes the quiet ones are the hardest to find.